Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Let me check my volume. I hope everyone is doing okay this morning. Well, afternoon. Yeah, it's 12:30. It's afternoon. Alright, so let's check my volume. And by the way, I want to thank everyone that assists with the show. Whether that's sharing content, liking videos, telling me to go F myself at times. Thank you very much. Or support through Patreon or Super Chat. In this very specific case, this show, Jeff Kuntz sent me this link. Dude, thank you very much. He's on the ball. I tend to function better at nights. And I tend to do this thing where I tend to run for long periods of time. In which case, I don't function all that well in the mornings. Oftentimes, when I'm functioning in the mornings, it's because I probably went up just straight through the night. That said, apparently Jeff Kuntz doesn't operate that way. Jeff Kuntz operates the way I think most people operate, where they go to bed at night and they wake up early in the morning. And he was there, the man on the wall, catching this particular story. And so I am sending Jeff Kuntz a thank you. Now, that said, I think the story is awesome because I follow these stories, UFO stories, when they come out in the paper. And they become available to us to look at and examine and think about and talk about. So, I'm going to make this a 420. I'm dedicating this 420 to Jeff Kuntz because thank you very much. This is not the first story that he's caught. I guess you can say it's sent to me. Good looking out, man. Thank you very much. Let's do a 420. And I know it's 12:30 in the afternoon. Yeah, that's my saving graces in the afternoon. It's 12:30 in the afternoon, but fuck it. I haven't had one in a long time. And I was looking for an issue, and this is an awesome issue to have one on. So, blaze one if you got one. That's what essentially what my 420s are. For my newbies, for people who are just coming to the show and who are like, what is the Progressive Soapbox all about? I have a, this channel is just me. The 420s are blaze one if you got ones. There's a history to it from the show, but whatever. It's put your skepticism and everything else to the side. You can pick it up at the end of the show. It's like taking your boots off when you go into the mosque. And just let your mind drift on stuff. And I use the blaze one if you got one thing because pot is this awesome way of separating a person to some degree with a better way of thought, more rational mind. In the way Bruce Lee says it, it makes people more, you can say heightens rational mind. That being said, I want to talk about this. Academy to the Stars. And speaking of that, I looked at this when I first started. I was like, God, this is kind of early to do this. But then I thought, my wife and I are going to be traveling. We're going to leave in September. And for a very long time, there are not going to be any of these 420s because you can't necessarily have those abroad. Until we get to Amsterdam, in which case they're going to be like 420s at 6 in the morning. But I was in, as a quick aside, I was in Cairo. I was in Egypt. This was back in 2007-ish. I think Bush was in office. And I went walking through the nighttime. I think it was like 1 in the morning. And doing this kind of Saturday Night Fever, I'm going to strut type thing down Cairo. And I'm walking through the street, and this guy stops me. He's like, he speaks English. Horrible English, but he speaks English. And him and I are talking, and him and I end up spending the day together, spending the night together. Not night like that. It just means like 2 in the morning or something like that. Maybe it was like 11 o'clock, but it was like 2 in the morning when I got back to my hotel. But I remember the last thing and the thing where it was like, all right, yeah, this is the end of this. We got to a certain point, and he was like, all right, man, so, we'll hook up. We'll see you tomorrow. I said, yeah. And he's like, yo, so, would you like to get some Moroccan hash? It's like, what? Would you like to get some Moroccan hash? And he says, you can get a amount up to this amount for $20. And I'm like, in that moment, you always have this thing in your head of, hey, that's not a bad deal. And I haven't, it's been a while since I've smoked anything. And then you also have this thing of, but God, you can go to jail. that duality of conflict all in that one moment. I've seen Locked Up Abroad enough that I've been freaked out about it. So, yeah, there probably is going to be no 420s for a very long time. Now, that's it. This story. Academy to the Stars is teasing a big announcement. Now, they're teasing this big announcement. Whatever this big announcement is, Tom DeLonge has come out. Something is coming up from Academy to the Stars in 1 or 2 weeks. Our investors will be pleased and our supporters will be happy. Now is a good time to invest at Academy to the Stars. Now, if you remember, Academy to the Stars, damn, I thought I had that up. I think I did have it up at one point. Academy to the Stars are the ones Blink 182, Rockstar, this guy.
Oh.
Blink 182. Tom DeLonge is one of the lead singers for Blink 182. Well, he became a UFO hunter. And in becoming a UFO hunter, he's donned himself with a particular ideology. Not one I don't necessarily think I agree with. It's the bad alien theory. But whatever. He dons a particular ideology. And he ends up having these governmental contacts. Now, from my understanding, the people in the UFO community thought Tom DeLonge was full of it. Thought he was just a yapper, running his mouth off, until WikiLeaks. What does WikiLeaks and politics have to do with Tom DeLonge? Well, that's a fucking interesting question, right? You have a rock star, this rock star is hunting aliens, and all of a sudden you have this big explosion of WikiLeaks dealing with the DNC. But what was not necessarily talked about was the parts in that included Tom DeLonge. Tom DeLonge is strewn all throughout WikiLeaks because he's talking to people affiliated with Podesta. He's getting in contact with military contacts, with spooks, with these people in the intelligence communities. He actually had the contacts. Tom DeLonge actually had the contacts. And with those contacts, Tom DeLonge starts to get his hands on certain information that starts to be leaked. Now, the interesting part of this is it wasn't just the information was leaked. It wasn't just that Tom DeLonge had spooks that were on his side at this point. The guy who was running one of the UFO desks comes out, quits his job, and starts speaking to the media about the program that he was working in the United States government, this Black Ops, or Black Secret Program, talking to UFOs. Now, he comes and gives an explanation of the stuff. He gives an explanation of the videos. Some of the military personnel that was engaged in some of the videos comes out in a big display, again, speaking to the media. Washington Post, Politico, CNN, MSNBC, the Young Turks, all of these media organizations following pretty much the exact same story. If I'm not mistaken, the New York Times comes out with a story on the exact same day as 1 or 2 other mainstream media outlets on the exact same story. All of us out in once. Everyone is talking about the subject. It is no longer a subject of ridicule. It is now a subject on the front page of all of these newspapers and all of these media outlets. Now, the interesting part here is pretending as if this story had just came out. Meaning pretending as if the media was like, oh my God, look at what just took place. The UFO community had known that this was going to come out for years in advance. So you can understand some of the skepticism here. Because right off the bat, we're being told that, hey, you can take this at face value, while at the same token, people who are behind the scenes know that this is not to be taken at face value. How are you supposed to deal with this? The guy has a bunch of spooks. The guy's, But that being said, for the first time, whatever you want to call it, however the skepticism that some people may have about it, in the mainstream, you have somebody who's talking about the UFO subject. And talking about it, A, in a serious way, and B, giving you the chops of the people who are military personnel to back up the story. And the information that they're using is coming directly from the Pentagon to some degree. You have confirmation. You have confirmation in the open. Meaning, it's not the ridicule, it's, you could say, the standard at this point. And I kind of want to make a clear distinction between what I mean here, because that's a big fucking deal. Whatever you want to think about Tom DeLonge, that's a big fucking deal. You have something that's... Because you must understand what I mean when I say mainstream. There's streams of thought. The mainstream is just as the one with the most money behind it and the one that most people give its attention to, just by virtue of the being the loudest voice. Call it mainstream. You have the public that accrues around the things that are talked about on that particular mainstream. But there are all sorts of lines of thought that are just as valid. I'm saying it's the mainstream thought at this point where this subject gets the degree of, yes, the military personnel was looking at it. We're speaking to the military personnel that was looking at it. We're speaking to the person who was running the program itself. All of these people came out of the Pentagon. Well, all these people came out of the Black Ops part. And all of these people are revealing themselves to the light of day. That's an amazing thing. Now, and just so people know what to talk about, this is Lou Elizondo. Lou Elizondo was the person who was running the program itself. This was one of the outings. So when Tom DeLonge is kind of teasing information, I'm trying to kind of get this idea of the information or the type of information that may be teased and the things that pop out of this type of stuff. Listen to this conversation. Lou Elizondo on CNN.
Front now, former Pentagon military official who ran the covert government program up until this last November, Luis Elizondo. Luis, thank you so much for your time tonight. I mean, first, tell us what the purpose of the program was and why it was so secretive.
Sure. The purpose of the program, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, was really designed to do just that. From a national security perspective, identify those things that we see, whether we see them electro-optically, we see them with radar, we see them as eyewitness reports, through a myriad of different ways and avenues that we receive the information, and try to ascertain and determine if that information is a potential threat to national security, in a nutshell.
So what did you find?
Well, we found a lot. I think it's probably been a little bit mischaracterized in some of the social media you see and what people put out, because a lot of times when we don't have a lot of information, we tend to fill in those gaps with what we think is logical. And there's still, by the way, a lot we really don't know. I think what's important is that we have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft. Let's call them aircraft. Things that don't have any obvious flight surfaces, any obvious forms of propulsion, and maneuvering in ways that include extreme maneuverability beyond, I would submit, the healthy G-forces of a human or anything biological, hypersonic velocities, low observability, positive lift, again, seemingly in defying the laws of aerodynamics. So people are talking. So do you think, I mean,
but do you believe, when you get that Navy pilot saying what he said, do you think that that was, a UFO? To obviously, I don't have any other word to use, or that, or something else?
Sure, that's a great question. Keeping in mind, it's not just the pilot's testimony on observation. Sure, when someone comes to you who's in charge of a multi-million-dollar weapon platform, who maintains a top-secret security clearance, who is paid and trusted by this country to go fight wars and to fly over cities with live munitions, and by the way, they're trained observers with millions of dollars invested in their training.
Yep.
I would submit to you it's pretty compelling. But on top of that, it's not just the eyewitness testimony. It is actual electro-optical data and radar returns. It's also people like radar operators and air traffic controllers. So I think the discussion should be maybe a little bit broader than that. I think people are focusing just on 2 videos coming from a set of F-18s when really it's a lot more than that.
So recently, I guess it was in October, astronomers spotted what they say could be the first interstellar asteroid. You see it there, kind of that strange shape from beyond the solar system. What do you see when you look at that?
Well, Ms. Burnett, I have to admit to you, when I ran this program, I was fundamentally looking at, my colleagues looking at 2 things.
Yeah.
What is it and how does it work? We have deliberately stayed away from going down the rabbit hole of who's behind the wheel and what are their intentions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have a lot of feelings towards that and are very emotional about that. And what I wanted to do is to allow the data to speak for itself and then use that data to inform leadership, senior DoD leadership, about the potential threat that these type of technologies pose to national security, especially over any type of controlled airspace that we might have. So I'm not trying to be evasive in any way or vague with your answer, but
yeah. Well,
I think there's a lot of possibilities.
Look, and I know you think it's important. I know you think that the government didn't take the threat seriously enough. So let me just ask you point blank the question. Do you believe that life from somewhere else, while you ran this program, came here, visited, observed?
I will tell you unequivocally that through the observation, scientific methodologies that were applied to look at this phenomena, that these aircraft, we'll call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory, nor in any foreign inventory that we are aware of.
So I know you're being clear, but I mean, the answer is yes.
I can't speak on behalf of the government. Obviously, I'm not in the U.S. government anymore. My personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone, whatever that means.
Up front now,
Now, I love that. Now, here's the thing. Language is a slippery thing. And Luis Elizondo, in that testimony, if you listen to what he's telling her, language is a slippery thing. So, there's nothing in our inventory that I am aware of. Okay. There's nothing that you're not aware of. And I can't speak on behalf of the government, but the language is slippery, that's all. Look, my point to this is, they're trying to get across a particular thing to the public, and they're doing it in a big, splashy way. Academy to the Stars was the outlet and the vehicle for that information to get out, or at the very least the beginning for that information to get out. And from my understanding, they're being told that there's more information that's being released. He, even right there, Luis Elizondo, who worked for that program, quit his job in order to work for Tom DeLonge. Hal Puthoff has worked for Tom DeLonge. He's been in this stuff like the Stanford Research Institute's projects going back for the last 20, 30 years. He has clout behind him. He also has a bunch of spooks behind him. And this guy who released this information was very cagey in regards to what he was saying. He's not speaking on behalf of the government. But if you're talking about this thing of confirmation in mainstream thought, this is the narrative that is taking place. I want to ask something different. So I want to segue from that part. Be on the lookout for something that's coming from Tom DeLonge in the next week or so. I put both links at the bottom for you to see for yourself. But this is red alert, something's coming soon. Keep calm, something's coming up. The last thing that was released was a report talking about the Pentagon, released from the Pentagon actually. There were two versions of the report. The report that we saw was apparently sanitized, but the report, there's another one that's apparently they say will never see the light of day. So we have no idea what this is going to be. Apparently there are samples of something that he has, some kind of hard samples or physical samples, in addition to other reports. We don't know what's coming up. So stay tuned. That's the first part. The second point I want to ask to this though is this thing of what does this mean? And I don't ask this question on the cosmic level. Like I understand not from the standpoint of a godless space where there is no meaning. I'm talking about from the standpoint of us. Meaning, yeah, from a godless space standpoint, fair enough. But from us, from our context, from the consciousness that is a human being, meaning if there is even one person on this planet, then what does it mean to that particular person? But what does it mean from us in a real way, in a physical matter, reality way? I suspect there's, like anything else, a range of things from the standpoint of meaning. But I got to be honest. I guess I'm not in this space brother mindset, and not necessarily because I'm overly concerned about anything else out there. I would make the point we don't know what this is. Like, there's nothing in our inventory that I'm aware of that's doing this. Great. There's nothing in the inventory that you personally are aware of that has the capacity to do this. How do we know? And I'm trying to say, where does this typically lead us? That's what I'm more so getting at. Not necessarily whether that's some black ops project, whether that's something coming to our shores. A more basic question is, regardless of what that is, what it's going to be used as, is kind of what I'm trying to get at. I'm separating this from the standpoint of, holy shit, that's amazing, to what does it mean in the real world phenomena of us as human beings on this planet, based on the language that's being wrapped around this. Now, how is it typically used? Alexander is talking about threat detection. All of these guys are talking about, to some degree, of threat detection. Even, what's his name, has the bad alien theory that he tried to spring on Joe Rogan and didn't necessarily look all that good doing. The weapon systems. That's what this sounds like to me. It sounds like a reason for weapon systems. It sounds like this thing of, hey, we need to protect ourselves from something. And you have a bunch of spooks coming in saying, hey, trust us. These guys are telling you right. And see, Tom DeLonge is a rock star and he's releasing this information. This is not me taking a shot at DeLonge. It's not it at all. I'm looking at more so the political aspects of this in a way that this will be used in the political sphere. We need more money for technology. Hey, maybe we need a satellite in space that floats about with lasers that potentially will just zap something if it's coming into our space. And just by chance, in the same way the political tools that are used in our societies, Donald Trump right now has said he needs to put a tariff, I think, on Canada. And he said so. The only way he was able to do this is by claiming that there was a military need to do this, meaning this national sovereignty, our national sovereignty is under threat or something to that degree. And so now we're going to put these kind of emergency tariffs. What a tool that he was using to put those tariffs on was not necessarily designed for that. Here's another thing. Hey, we have voter fraud. So because we have all of this voter fraud, we need to put voter ID laws all throughout the South. Now, the reason they're using the voter ID laws has nothing to do with voter fraud, because there is no voter fraud. They're using this because they want to depress the vote. I'm saying people use things for other reasons all the time. This is just political pretext. If we were in a different political climate, maybe. But I just had Jerry Beck on my show. And when Jerry Beck was on the show, Jerry Beck was making a damn good point about something that I had a hard time disagreeing with him about. But my disagreement was more so for practical reasons. What do you put your feet on the ground? Jared Beck made this point that, look, how do you know what of your elections are real? Like, how do you know? They don't like having recounts. And not just not like having recounts, they hate this idea of even trying to verify the vote. You have gerrymandering all throughout the country, meaning the vote, which is the point of the process, continues to get undermined by people who necessarily want to pull in a particular direction. The reason for it, meaning this idea of electing the representative that the public wants, matters less than winning. It becomes a certain degree of theater and a certain degree of illusion in regards to the way they go with their affairs. He made this point of, I have no idea what reality looks like in a world where you don't have actual elections. Now, Jared Beck isn't wrong on that. Cynical. I would make the point that he doesn't know, but that's kind of the point that he's making. You don't know. Now, take that to something on an epic scale as this. We have no idea what is in our black vaults. We have no idea. Tom DeLonge had a certain particular ideology about himself, and he got wrapped up with certain people who said, hey, here you go. You can make the case that Stephen Greer, same thing. He had a certain idea of things and got wrapped up with certain people who, pushed it along. But here's the catch. If both of these people have spooks wrapped around them who's whispering in their ear and telling them things, how do they have these wide, disparaging viewpoints of what reality actually looks like? And I'm trying to make this point from the standpoint of the people who are fully into the UFO community. They don't... Look, all I'm saying is it's a hall of mirrors. And it's hard to necessarily know what's real. And in that hall of mirrors and trying to know what's real, you've now added aliens. Yes, I have somewhat of a cynical view of this. And my cynical view of this comes a lot from just viewing American politics. And I don't necessarily think this particular subject is excluded from the political sphere. That's all. And so when I see this and I see people releasing information like this, I have to question, what is the political aims of the information being released? And no, I don't necessarily take it at face value. So let's see. I guess my point is, I would love for this to be the Kumbaya moment. Like the moment where it's like there's a breaking of the political space, where there's trust and truth and people trying to, you know, join hands as one earth and kind of walk out into the cosmic sphere together and all this other stuff. Donald Trump is our goddamn president. And they've added potentially aliens to the mix. Yeah, be afraid. Be very, very afraid. John Hill, aliens are coming down to tell us to vote for Hillary Clinton in 2020. Oh, that's funny. Confirmation, not disclosure. I think we know who to thank for Trump's idea in American dominance in space. Fucking terrifying. Wesley, you know what's wild? That crossed my mind too. That crossed my mind too. Space Force, like, if you had a president who was a reality show host, and that reality show host sees this guy, Luis Elizondo, on television, on CNN, talking about aliens invading our territory. He hears Harry Reid talks about this. He hears Rand Paul talk about this. He maybe sees some of this stuff. Maybe somebody briefs him on this. Meaning maybe, you know, somebody gets him the document that came out from Las Vegas where the Pentagon has all this information about UFOs. Is it possible that that guy with that reality show host mentality about him gets that information and he's like, oh my God, we're being invaded by aliens. We need a space force. We need a space force. And that reality show host, with that bit of knowledge that he has, goes out and he advocates for that space force. Now, the rest of the world looks at this and says, what the fuck is he talking about? What is he talking about? A space force? Has he lost his mind? What is he talking about? Missing the proper context of what he might have been exposed to. I don't know. The Space Force thing is weird to me. Outside of some other context, I don't know what pushed him to that. This is just weird. Just kind of out of the blue. So, let's see. All right, I have to end this because I have another show that I need to do immediately now. I have an appointment at 1, and the person is going to be signing on. Don't go anywhere. There's going to be a special guest that's coming on to the show. I'm going to set up for it immediately after I end this. Reagan doesn't sound crazy anymore. Star Wars propaganda. I know, but you know, it's funny. Libs are supposed to be the lefties, but it's the Republicans that are trying to put forces in space to fight aliens. It's amazing. Donald Trump's Space Force Academy at Starfleet sounds good. Luca Clemente, Jamal, I'm tired. 60% of my patron support of your channel is going to Progressive Voice. Can you get the P.O. box like Cardinals? Oh God, I don't know if Progressive Voice has a box. Is this a communal dream? I would love for it to be. His physicist UNC worked for FED. Oh, works for the Fed when Tesla Trove was trickled out. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to end this. Wow, I'm shocked that for a UFO one I had this many people here. Fucking A. Moving the dial. Look, two things. I know this is going to sound really bizarre, and it's going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I'm not. You can have two contradictory emotions, and they still exist in the same space. I'm cynical on this because I kind of want to believe it, and so it makes me more cynical about it. I've looking at political actors for the past 2 years have told me that the worst is usually more right. Now, when I say that to say that I accept that there are certain people who probably want to get the information out. Yes. The question is, what is the crowbar that you're using to get this information out? And is the crowbar that you're using to get this information out going to create this kind of can of worms from standpoint of, oh my God, we're being invaded by aliens, you know, get your pistols. I think that's a worse outcome, personally. Now, I don't necessarily know what's taking place with regards to all this. I don't necessarily believe the thing that's, you know, that's being pushed out there, saying as, again, the story was known for like 2 years prior than when it came out, even though they're pretending as if this is a new story. So, yeah, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical, and you should be too. But then you get to this other issue of where do you put your feet on the ground? Which is kind of what I asked Beck, and I kind of what I asked Debbie. Where do you put your feet on the ground? Like, how do you know what's real in a hall of mirrors? So, I'm going to end this here. But I'll be back in like 5 minutes or so. Thanks, guys.